Shira Center is a fellow at the Institute of Politics in the spring. We're very lucky to have her. She was political editor of Roll Call, still is, and she's doing a study group on gender and Congress. Is that right?
Yep, it's called 2014 Gender, Media, and the Permanent Campaign, and it meets Thursdays at 4 o'clock at L166.
It's very important to gather in 4 o'clock on Thursdays.
Yes.
Do you think that the media helps or harms the kind of advancement of women and gender in politics? Are they to blame, or are they a contributing factor to highlighting their success?
Well, you use the word media, and I don't think Hollywood helps this at all. So if you talk about news media versus media, I think if anything, Hollywood has hurt the image of a lot of female politicians by portraying them in certain ways. I mean, look at Game Change, the movie, for example. Right. Or even House of Cards, right? They portray the only top female lawmaker in that show in the second season, right? She's whipped and she betrays someone, she's fairly conniving, So in that case, that angle of the media, I don't think has done a lot for the portrayal of women in Congress. I think my end of the media, the news media, the Congressional Press Corps, we're a little more agnostic in terms of gender in Congress. It's a little different on the presidential campaign trail because of the novelty of especially Hillary or something else. I think gender plays a greater role in that coverage, but in Congress itself, less so.
And on the Hillary front, so you have a study group specifically focused around Hillary 2016. Is she going to run? Is she not? First of all, do you think she's going to run? Do you think she's not?
I'm really almost certain she's going to run.
I'm almost certain because there's this saying that like having sex, you just have sex once. You don't just run for president once, and then just give up.
Well, the flip side of this is if you want to run for president, you run until you're not running, right? It goes for other offices as well. You're running until you decide you're not running. But I think in this case, every indication to me says she is going to go for it, and no indications say she's
not.
Yeah.
What do you think she did different in 2016 in terms of her, her gender and her portrayal of hers? In 2008, she was portrayed as mean. She was portrayed as especially towards the end. When I see the interviews towards the end, she comes across as like a fighter. Like Obama's the nice, likable man, and she's like the fighter, like in Bosnia.
It's years after the 2008 campaign. A memo from early on in her race was leaked to a reporter, Joshua Green, and now Bloomberg, I believe. And the memo was from Mark Penn. The memo very clearly details his advice, his strategy for Clinton, and essentially says she should shun her femininity and be the Iron Lady, the Margaret Thatcher of a political candidate, right? Americans want a father to be their president or a father figure. And it's fascinating from a gender perspective. It's equally fascinating, especially in retrospect, because I think she really gained some traction on the campaign trail when she showed some femininity, right? Remember when she shed a tear in New Hampshire and came back to win it? I showed that film in my study group last week. And then also to watch her, if you look at her tenure at State Department, and then also the interview she's given, she is not hiding 1 ounce of her femininity, right? She is when she talks about her accomplishments at the State Department, she refers to her work most often with women and girls around the world.
That's the big line I remember of hers about human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. That's
exactly.
How would you advise the Republicans to improve their standing with women?
Well, I can't advise the Republicans. First of all, it's not my position as a reporter to do so. Plus, I don't think I know the answer, even if I could. But it is mostly social issues. Democrats have very successfully, in the last couple cycles, notably in 2012, moved suburban female voters. You're also looking at somewhat of a demographic shift in America, too, with a large number of single female voters increasing. People are getting married later. Those are another key demographic. Hint, hint, I have a study group called All the Single Ladies, which looks specifically at this. I call it All the Single Ladies, or How Campaigns Win Today, because they've become such a desirable demographic in campaigns.
What do you think men can do to close the gender gap in US politics?
Right now, on the elected official level, House Republicans in particular are having training sessions, right? They're being taught how to speak to female voters, how to talk about so-called women's issues, although I think that's a little patronizing,
Yes.
but how to talk about certain issues that affect women more than men, or in the context of gender, and they're actually in class in some ways, being taught these things. So it's certainly a problem. I think the worst thing that could happen to Republicans in terms of the gender divide is to have another Todd Aiken this cycle, right? They do not want, another trifecta or something along those lines of a binder's fill of women, Todd Aiken, Richard Murdoch, something like that. They have to be extra careful, and they are being extra careful that they don't have a trifecta moment like that again this cycle, because they could possibly, if that's the case, they could lose younger single female voters for a while.
Kind of moving off the gender more towards the Congress issue. At the start of 2014, an opinion poll by Gallup showed that the approval rating of Congress was like 13%. It was a historic low. Why should students be interested in running for Congress? Opinion polls also show that students, very interested in public service. Around, Harvard, so many people I meet are so interested in public service. But why would anyone want to become a congressman?
No, I think ambition is part of it. But it's a problem. It used to be that Congress was a place you could make a real difference. For a district, you could say, I delivered that bridge, or I got this program started to have veterans get better work training after they come back from overseas. And it's become less and less of a place where you could do that. Look at a lot of the long-term senators, or even members of the House who are only there for a couple years and decide to leave. It just isn't a fun place to be anymore.
Right.
So why would anyone still want to come to Congress? Maybe they still believe.
Yes.
And it's still, I wouldn't say it's a fun job, but it's still a meaningful job in many ways.
In talking about the future class of Congress, what races should we be watching for 2014? Do you have any tips?
The real battle this cycle is in the Senate. Senate Republicans need to net 6 seats to take control of that chamber. And the map is very much in their favor. There are a lot of Senate...
Do you think they're going to do it?
50-50 chance. I think it could go either way. 6 seats is a lot. Okay?
Yes.
It's a lot of money, but there are something like exactly that many, maybe one more of those seats are in states Obama lost, in some cases by like 20 points or something, huge
Alaska,
margin. Alaska, South Dakota, West Virginia, Arkansas, these are pretty red states.
Yes.
So I would say, to really narrow it, the one state I will be watching more closely than any on election night is North Carolina. There's a first-term senator there, and I think North Carolina especially...
Who beat a Republican.
It can... has some interesting demographics to it as well, with its suburban growth. Again, we talked about female voters in that area. The suburbs around the 3 metro areas in that state have been exploding. So I would look at that one. If North Carolina falls, if Democratic Senator Kay Hagan loses re-election, I'm pretty sure Republicans have picked up the Senate.
And how do you think 2014 midterms would affect 2016?
Let's say Republicans pick up seats. If you look at the 2016 map, in the Senate, Democrats were looking at a great year, because these are all the seats they lost during the bright red wave of 2010.
Yes.
Right? They could very easily, if they lose control of the Senate, they could very easily pick it back up in 2016, just given the map. Yeah, and in the House side too, a lot of these House races that are in reddish, purplish districts, ask House candidates, a lot of them are not running this cycle because they're waiting to 2016 when they think Hillary's going to be on the ballot, because she performs much better than Barack Obama in a lot of these blue-collar areas. For example, my hometown area of southwestern Pennsylvania. Within
the waves of people being elected to Congress, why aren't there so many women? Why, or particularly, why don't women run in the first place? Or is it the fact that they don't? Maybe they do run, but they don't get elected. I don't know.
So there are a lot of reasons to look at. One, it depends on the state, right? And some states have a greater tradition and network of electing women than others.
Which states?
Iowa has elected some 270 people to the Congress, the Senate, House Senate, and the governor's office. Not one has been a woman. And then you look at New Hampshire, a state that's similarly competitive, but from a different part of the country, has a female governor, 2 female United States senators, and 2 female members of Congress. First state to run the table completely in terms of female elected officials.
All 100%.
Yeah, the entire delegation and the governor are women. Well, I think part of it has to do with incumbency and turnover, right? Women have a better chance of sitting to office when there are open seats, right? As does any candidate.
Yeah.
If the seat is open, your chances are better. I think that is one of the reasons people called 1992 or 4 the year of the woman.
Right.
And because women made huge gains in Congress that year. And that was in part because there was a scandal
Yes.
in Congress, the post office scandal, Professional Post, kind of a non-scandal, but a scandal. And a lot of members retired and the seats opened up. And so that gave women a huge opportunity.
So the more open seats, the more you're going to see women
Absolutely.
tempted
Open
to
seats
run.
are huge. In that case too, voters generally are less inclined to perceive female politicians as scandal tainted. Right? So females are often a strong, I would say, antidote for some parties to, or at least a way for some parties to capitalize on the other party having a lot of scandal, right?
Yes.
Because they're kind of seen as, just not your normal politician still, right? Then there are issues of recruitment, getting candidates in, and that's another thing my
Is one
look
party
at.
better than the other in general at outreach to female potential candidates?
Democrats are much better at it, I would say. Republicans are getting better, but in many ways they've just started. And the reason Republicans have more trouble with it is because they, on the whole, have a lot of issues playing with primaries.
Of course, yeah.
Right. So I think Republican women, and this is something especially House Republicans are struggling with, they would love to have more than the 19 women they have in their caucus in the House.
19?
19. The numbers have decreased.
Whoa.
I know. So 19 women, but they would, they've recruited, they have some good candidates, but the party has a policy not to play in primaries, given the backlash of recent cycles. Democrats are much more forward now of going in with an iron fist and saying, we support this candidate, the other guy should get out. So, so because Republicans are not playing in primaries, they can't support, at least outwardly, or even privately, a lot of the female candidates. I think some of them privately would want to win the nomination.
They're more kind of afraid of the kind of like central
the backlash,
intervention.
because in the Republican Party still, it's not a good thing to be the Washington D.C.'s anointed candidate, right? Especially in Republican primaries.
Are you optimistic about the role that women will play in the future in Congress and in politics? And if so, why? Or are you less than optimistic about the future for women?
I'm more than optimistic, because at the very heart of it, parties want women to run. I once had a conversation with an operative, and I asked, given all things equal, how much more of an advantage is having a female candidate versus a male candidate, same resume. And I was a Republican, and he said, 2-3 points.
Well,
so it makes a difference.
That's huge.
Right, that's not scientific, that's an anecdotal experience, but it was from someone who knew what he was talking about. And I think there is a lot of opportunity and a great future, because both of the parties want it. Women make up more than half of the American population. They see it. The party needs to see like they are open to having many female elected officials rise through their ranks.
So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It's been an absolute pleasure.